Murder case that has stretched for more than a decade is heading back to trial on Monday. A woman once convicted of killing her husband is now facing a jury again. On June 28, 2014, investigators found 46-year-old William Jake Embert dead from a gunshot wound inside of his Dougherty County home. His wife, Susan Embert, told police that he had taken his own life, and at first, investigators believed her, but Jake's children did not. They then pushed for answers, hiring a private investigator, demanding the case be reopened. And what followed would unravel their family's deepest fears that Jake didn't die by suicide, but by murder.
Justice for Jake. That's, the motto we're going with. Justice for Jake. I personally feel like it's a Lifetime movie, almost like surreal. I can't believe it.
This has gone on 3.5 years. They lost a family member by a violent death. They want to bring this thing to trial, and they were hoping they would get a date today.
Back in 2015, a grand jury indicted Susan Embert on malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and firearm charges. Investigators also believe that Jake may have been poisoned in the weeks leading up to the shooting with toxic substances like antifreeze and insecticide found in his hair fibers. Well, Jake's family never believed that he committed suicide, so the private investigator did some digging on his own and gave his results to Dougherty County District Attorney Greg Edwards, who then had his investigators look further into the case. And after years of delays, the case finally went to trial in 2019. The Embert family filed a lawsuit saying that the Dougherty County Police and coroner failed to conduct any reasonable investigation, performing no autopsy or toxicology tests. Prosecutors argued that Susan wanted Jake's money and property and pointed to statements that she allegedly made, like telling others that her husband would, quote, wouldn't be alive much longer.
There is no $500,000 insurance policy. There were some funds which are accountable for, but there's no funds to be frozen. And again, the close to a $500,000 claim is baseless.
All I'm saying is when you're doing an investigation, you do every test that you can do. You look at the cartridge case position within the scene. You look at the individual who's been shot. You look at the trajectory of the bullet.
Now, after deliberating, a jury found Susan guilty on all counts. She was then sentenced to life in prison, finally giving Jake's family the closure they had fought for. But that closure wouldn't last long. In 2024, 5 years after the conviction, a stunning discovery. One of the jurors on Susan Embert's 2019 trial was a convicted felon and by law should have never served. And that trial court threw out Susan's conviction and dismissed the case entirely, calling the 9-year delay a violation of her rights to a speedy trial. And within hours, she walked out of the prison.
Incredibly satisfying and incredibly gratifying. It's important to note that the original conviction not only was overturned, but it was completely voided. So she has not technically been convicted at all.
And in February 2024, Susan's legal team argued that approximately 9 years had passed since her initial arrest before a proper trial. And Judge Lockett's dismissal, he says Susan's trial counsel is responsible for a 3.5-year delay in her trial.
We respect the courts, but we respectfully disagree with Lockett's decision.
The state was diligent in moving the case forward, and that we should be given the opportunity to retry this individual. We will do all we can to fight for justice, to make sure that justice is served and the truth is brought out.
Now, prosecutors appealed, and in 2025, the Georgia Supreme Court reversed the dismissal, ruling the trial was still counted even with an ineligible juror. And that meant that the murder case could move forward again. In August, a judge ruled Susan's rights were not violated, ordering her to stand trial a second time. And she was later granted bond under strict supervision. And that's where we are now. More than 11 years after Jake Embert's death, both sides are preparing to present their case once again right here in Dougherty County. Prosecutors say they will rely on much of the same evidence from the 2019 trial, which the defense hints their strategy could look very different this time. Now, for Jake's family, this second trial reopens wounds that they thought were closed. And for Susan Embert, it's another fight for her freedom in the courtroom. And for the community of Albany, it's a high-stakes test of how the justice system handles mistakes, delays, and questions that linger for more than a decade. The state is expected to call many of the same witnesses from the first trial, including forensics, medical examiners, and family members. Jury selection begins tomorrow morning, so make sure you stay with us on air and online, as we'll be there for the whole trial.